Yeah, we are live just in time. Nice to see you again, Matthias. So the last time we've seen each other in person at the Data Grill, and now we are virtually back
Absolutely.
after
Yeah.
yeah,
Very nice to see you again. And
was kind of
just,
crazy May with events with the MS Build, and I think that this is a good starter. MS Build, you've not been there, me too. So even we both have to work from time to time and cannot attend to all the events, but it was kind of overwhelming. I think the whole May in terms of updates and new features, and I have such a long backlog of to test stuff and some stuff from the talks we go seen at the data grill, like everything around real time analytics. It's still on my list to test. So and then lots of bookmarks in the browser and in LinkedIn. Yeah, so crazy. So how do you manage? So you are even yeah, I think even deeper in all this professional development game. So how do you inform yourself, or how you prioritize what's important and what's
mm,
next?
um, yeah, I mean, Build, I was quite sad that I didn't have a chance to go. Because obviously, Build is originally a developer conference, which is obviously a, a sort of sphere I
Mm.
feel quite familiar and comfortable with. But well, there was a lot of travel for me already, so just couldn't afford doing that one as well. But you're absolutely right. It's an ever sort of growing mountain of things to catch up with. It feels right. If you want to turn on
Mhm.
switch over
Yes.
to my screen,
Yeah.
I put a fabric block here, which hopefully everyone's
Oh.
familiar with. And if you look at that,
Mm.
particularly that fabric hasn't really been around for this long in the public, right? Look, there are 230 items here already, so there's definitely a very busy team. It's pretty wild. Virtually every day, like June 4th, June 3rd, June 3rd, right? Look at that. There's new stuff coming.
Mm.
Um, so, one thing I wanted to share was if you condense this a little bit and just focus
Mm.
on what's really important, scroll down a little bit and go to monthly updates
Oh,
underneath
okay.
category. That's a very useful one because they have been pretty good lately to regularly
Mm.
post those monthly updates. As you can see, um, the May one is the most recent one. And so if you want to inform yourself around fabric, that's the one I would recommend. Um, a huge, I mean, if I just scroll down here,
Yeah.
if I think someone once said if you were to print it, it would be like 60 or 80 pages or so. It's still wild, but at least you've got everything in a nicely curated
Mm.
shape and form. And actually, looking at this May update in particular, we can see Fabric Roadmap update, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
And we've
very big. I
yeah,
think
we've got this really cool link here, which has everything around Fabric Plan. So we've got a Power BI section here. Um, that one has various open 2024 items and quite a few shipped already. Want to look at some stuff that's particularly interesting, I would say down here we've got edit of direct lake
mm.
models in desktop. In fact, that will also lead us over to something else I want to talk about. Um, we've got metrics hub showing here. That's something which has already been shown publicly. I
Mm.
remember
Yeah.
Carly, the PM behind it, did a stream with my Carlo, which I would definitely recommend. She's very energetic and really gets her feature across very nicely. Copilot, dark mode. Well, I don't. I'm always a bit ambivalent about that. I know, weirdly, lots of people seem to care about it. I'm not necessarily in that camp. So that's that.
Maybe because you develop in VS Code anyway.
Yeah. And then we've got lots of fabric stuff here. And same thing, just even more items. And there's also, well, actually, there's super interesting things here. .NET SDK is apparently coming. Service principal support, loads and lots of people are interested in that. Folders and workspaces, which I believe are already in preview, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted...
GitHub support is something
GitHub,
that
exactly.
people are asking about.
And one other thing I wanted to point out is actually here. Where? Oh yeah, here. There we go. So one thing announced in the May monthly update was Git integration support for direct lake models, which was quite interesting. So I did a couple of conference presentations precisely on that topic, i.e. CI/CD around Fabric, and on the day when I presented, that had not been released yet. It actually came like 24 hours later. So back then I was still presenting that this is not supported. So things are moving quite fast. But if you don't mind, I wanted to spend some time talking direct lake models today.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I even think, okay, when they make this editable in Power BI Desktop, does this mean that Power BI Desktop will use the REST API in the background, like Tabular Editor does, or is it a different connection to this model that, in fact, lives only in the service? This is a big necessity to have some CI/CD over it, because you cannot make a safe copy of this.
Well, can you? So let's see what you can do today, right?
So cat tools, I think you can, but
so okay, let's talk direct lake models a little bit. So Git integration just shipped. They're also partially supported in deployment pipelines. They have been supported on the XMLA endpoint for a while, but there's definitely no support in Power BI Desktop. And as we've just seen, it's actually showing up as a pending item in the Power BI roadmap. So I've got an example workspace here, which contains basically a sort of standard medallion architecture setup. So if we look into the
now you can use the task flows for medallion architecture.
So we've got three lake houses here: bronze, silver, and gold. Where's gold hiding? Down here, right? We've got a pipeline that populates the bronze lake house, and then we've got a couple of notebooks that basically moves data across into silver and gold. And then ultimately, we have a semantic model, a direct lake model, that sits on top of the gold lake house. And if we go there, here we go. If we go there and go open data model, we see the web editor for this semantic model. And currently, that's the only way you can actually create and edit those kinds of models, right? But because there's XMLA support, and since there has been XMLA support, what I can do is I can actually to tabular editor, and I can just open this particular workspace, I happen to have the connection string here already. And I can actually connect to my direct lake model. In this case, it happens to be this one. So each lakehouse by default, has an auto-generated semantic model attached to it. So it's those ones here. But the one I created explicitly is this one down here. So opening that one up allows me to explore the model. And if I then go one step further and do save to folder, I get into my source control view and basically end up with the full sources for my model. So let's go in here. Sorry, wrong folder. We are here. As you can see, I've created some stuff already. Cool. So I've just saved that, and because I enabled Tyndall as my output format for tablet editor, I'm actually getting Tyndall here. So let's have a look here. Normal model, really. And the one thing that makes a model a direct lake model is, well, two things. First of all, each table, if you go to the partition, each table is in direct lake mode. So that makes it a direct lake table, right? Secondly, by convention, the model must have an expression called database query. And that one must be a SQL database connection. So if you were to rename that, it wouldn't. It basically has to use this particular name. So we've got that. One thing we can do, given that we now have full access to the underlying source, is we can actually set one very useful property. That is something which we don't get access to otherwise, and it's this one here. The direct lake behavior. That's a relatively new property which was introduced just a few months ago, and it's currently set to automatic, but you can change it and allowing you to switch between direct lake only and direct query only. Remember, direct lake models have an auto fallback for direct query when for some reason the system can't actually form a sort of a direct lake connection. If you go in here and change that explicitly to direct lake only, you basically disable that, which I would always recommend. If you want to ensure that you don't accidentally, if you're absolutely certain that your model should always perform in direct lake mode, right? Then you should definitely enable that, because it will mean that the system will enforce it. So if I now go back and save again to folder, here we go. We now see, here we go, right? So this is now an additional Tyndall property, direct lake behavior, direct lake only. So we've got that. And now from here, I can basically do further model editing using, the power of tablet editor. And the other thing is I can put it in source control. I can automate deployments and things like that. So one thing I would do personally is I would parameterize the SQL connection details, right? So if you look at this one, SQL.database, we basically have a server reference and we have a database reference here. We can easily make that one parameters. And in fact, since we're in Tyndall here, I can just type, right? I can basically just type expression, give it a name, and that makes it a shared expression. Because I don't want to mistype anything, I'm going to do something very simple here, which is, I'm just gonna do this one. Here we go. Right. So let's see what we have now. So basically, in here we now have variable references. And here I've got two expressions, fabric server and fabric database, and both of them contain a string with my respective settings. Cool. So we've got that, and then I can use PBI tools to deploy the whole thing. Given that XMLA is fully supported for direct lake models, I can now actually leverage the fact that I've got those dedicated parameters, and I can reference them here. So let me just have a look at, how I'm getting to those values. So going back here, this is my workspace. And as I said before, this direct lake model is connected to my gold lake house. Direct lake models are actually always connected to the SQL endpoint for the lake house. So that's where I need to go. Sorry, I want to go to details. Here we go. Right, so here I've got SQL connection string, so I can just copy that one and paste that in here. There we go. And then the second thing is the database ID is the one that is in the URL, so I can just grab it here. Don't get concerned, it says data mart here, but it is what it is, so it's the right one. So putting this in here now, and as you can see, I already had those values in any case. Putting this in here now means that my newly created parameters will be replaced as part of the deployment. It also means that this dependency between my model and some external Fabric resource is now held in my deployment manifest rather than somewhere else, right? So I've got complete visibility here. So it's a really important DevOps principle, having that kind of important configuration setting in under source control as well. So let me also do one other thing, just to make sure that the demo is completely valid. Let me actually create a whole new workspace from scratch. So let's call this direct link. That way we can see that it's actually working end to end. There we go. Apply. So the only thing I need to do here is to ensure my service principal has access to my workspace, right? Because that's what PBI tools does. So if I put this one in here, make this a member and add, I'm now good to go. All I need to do is to basically take the workspace name and copy it in here. There we go. And if I now go over here, that's the command shell which runs in that exact same folder. I can do PBI tools deploy dot model, and I'm going to do what if, which will basically validate that my credentials are correct and everything else is as required. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So that only did a test connection. We're all good here. So let me go ahead and actually deploy that for real. All I need to do is to drop the dash what if. So it's now replacing those parameters. It's creating a new model. And here we go. Cool. So we've got a model. If I go here and refresh my workspace, we've got that. Very cool. And if I go to the lineage view, I can also see that this model is actually connected to a lakehouse, a SQL endpoint in a different workspace, right? I can see that here. So that worked very nicely. So let's go and actually check out this. I can go in here and, for instance, I can just click on my sales table. Oops, there's a problem. That was totally expected. So one thing I wanted to show is because I enabled the enforced direct lake connection, it cannot fall back to direct query. Now, why would it fall back to direct query? The thing with direct lake models is that you need to perform a initial refresh of the model so that it basically fetches metadata from your connected lakehouse. I haven't done that. I've only done a metadata deployment here. And in that case, it will not be able to work in direct lake mode. It will fall back to direct query. We can see that here very nicely because in this case, it will fail. And it's really important to actually have that sort of as a guard, if you will, because if you're not aware, you would still get a seemingly working model, but it would actually run in direct query the whole time without you ever noticing, right? So that's why I actually put that here. So what do we need to do? We need to enable refresh. Now, refresh is obviously part of the PBI tools deployment suite, right? So I've got refresh enabled here. The only thing is I actually said skip new dataset. So this means the first time a dataset is being created, it will not perform a refresh, which also means that if I go in and just the same deployment, it should actually trigger a refresh for me. Now this is going to fail. Just there we go. So this fails. Why does it fail? This is a credential problem. If I go into my model, here we go, and go to settings, I can see that there is a a so-called cloud connection, which is basically a connection to my SQL endpoint. I cannot edit that right now because I'm not the owner. My service principal is the owner. So I can go in here and manually take over ownership, and then I can edit that. But obviously, that's not a very CI/CD way of doing it, right? Because we want to automate everything. So the next issue we have with that is that by default, particularly if you use the UI, we're actually using a single sign-on connection, which basically means that so anyone using the data model via report will have their identity information passed through to the lakehouse. That single sign-on means. Now, this is something which cannot be automated. So we cannot create a XMLA model via a service principal and also set a single sign-on connection. That's not possible with the available APIs. So I did quite a fair bit of research here, and actually also checked with the guys at Microsoft what to do in this case. And I found one way of achieving what we want to achieve here, which is full automation. The key thing here is that this is actually considered a cloud connection. Now, in Power BI, we have our managed connections. So what you can do here, and that's the only way you can actually get this to work, you can create a new cloud connection, which in this case would be server. As you can see, there are loads and loads of possibilities here. So SQL Server. I call this my direct lake house. You call this whatever you want. And then we have server and database here, which is used for the what I already copied earlier. So I can actually just copy this one across. So I put server here, and I put database here. Okay. And then I'm going to authenticate with my own user credentials, which means all connections to that will be done using my user rather than the actual report user, particularly if I leave the SSO option unticked here. So that's something which I would want in that case, because it enables something else that's a good practice. It allows us to actually use row level security. So once I disable the single sign-on connectivity and actually put a dedicated identity for the connection, which is basically an admin user, I can then use row-level security in order to administer access. And that's the best practice, what people should be doing in an enterprise context. And again, this is not what you get if you use the web editor and sort of click yourself around. This is stuff sort of you need to know and you need to configure properly. Okay, cool. So if I create this, what I'm getting is this connection ID. And what I can do now is I can tell PBI tools that on the first deployment of this model, it should actually explicitly link it to this cloud connection. And once it's done that, it can then trigger the refresh and everything else will work fully automatically. So in order to do that, let me just copy a little snippet. Okay, right. So we have this piece, which is existing PBI tools functionality. So that's been in place for a long time. It's basically gateway support. Now, I only found out via back channels that if you use this special GUID, so just zeros, you reference shared cloud connections. That's not documented anywhere, but that's the magic trick here. And the only other thing I need to do now is to get my new connection ID, this one, pop it in here. There we go. And now everything will actually work fully automated end to end. In order to prove that, let's go back to my workspace. Let's delete my model. Here we go. Cool. And now we can rerun this, and we're now going to get the model created with the shared cloud data source, which allows us to trigger a refresh, and that will then allow us to do direct lake queries. So the whole thing should just take a few seconds. And I'm sort of walking through this because it took me a long time to sort of figure out what's the right process here, as you can imagine. And hopefully some folks out there will find it useful because it's all possible, but you sort of need to, you sort of need to know your way. Now, very good. So there was one crucial thing I forgot to do. And I'm glad this reminded me, which is going back to my cloud connections, because those are sort of shared credentials, you need to explicitly assign permissions for other users to use them, right? Otherwise, you'd open up a massive security hole here. So this is the one I just created, and right now only my own AD user has access to it, right? Because I created it. But obviously the deployment is done using my service principal. So what I need to do is to just find my service principal and to basically share this data connection with my service principal. There we go. So let me just delete this one once more. And now we should be good. Right. Cool. Okay. Replacing database information. We can see the model is already showing up in the UI in the background. So we've got a new data set now. Now refresh is starting. And this time, the refresh succeeded, right? This is direct lake. It's the refresh operation is basically just a bit of metadata scanning. So that's why it's super quick and cheap. And as you can see, it took a few seconds. So if I now go back here into to my model and say create a blank report, I'm going to see that everything is great. There we go, right? So now I know this is actually a direct lake query because a direct query is disabled. I can make this a matrix. I can look at sales amount by product, for instance. And if I want to, I can also slice by year as an example. So let's make this a list. And here we go. Cool. So this is direct lake in action, but based on a full CI/CD setup as far as my model is concerned, right? So I can now iterate over that model, keep it under source control, and basically ensure that every time we've got any model updates, get deployed with everything else actually happening as necessary. By the way, normally only the very first refresh needs to be triggered explicitly. By default, subsequent updates will automatically trigger the metadata refresh, but that's also something which can be disabled. So that would be the end-to-end. So basically, we did a direct lake model in using the web editing experience. We then brought the sources down using Tableau Editor and an XMLA connection, converted it to Timdal, parameterized the database connection. We created a shared data source and assigned permissions to the service principal, added a PBI tools deployment manifest, and then pretty much deployed the model in a fully automated fashion, including a refresh, including the data connection. And yeah, so I should do a little write-up of that at some point, but hopefully just having this walkthrough will be quite useful. Not sure whether we have any questions from people.
Oh, this Alex says, love to see this. Yes, of course. Me too. That's a good way to parameterize. And then indeed, I've seen the first time that how you can extract the direct lake model to a local version and then work code first there. And it doesn't look that different, actually. It's just the connection.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's just a normal model. The only difference is that partitions are different. and that here we have the table reference as well.
Yes. Okay.
So,
But
just to explain, so this is the table in my lakehouse, right? So if I go to my lakehouse, just going back here, don't need to save a report. Go to lineage. Go, can I? Okay, gold lakehouse. Here we go. Sorry, too many clicks. Okay, here we go. So I've got 3 dimension tables and then the fact table, and looking at the partition definition, this is how they're linked. We've got entity name, which links to the lakehouse table, and then this is what I was talking about earlier, the expression name, which contains our SQL database connection. Technically, you can rename that as well. It's just if you use the web modeling experience, it by convention is called database query.
Okay. Okay, understood. Okay, I think last chance for questions. I'm seeing you, all the watching people, but yeah. If there will be no questions, then I can just say a big thank you to you for this tutorial, how to work with Direct Lake, and yeah, even without Power BI Desktop, and even with Power BI Desktop in place, this is quite in some kind more flexible because of all the parameter stuff, and yeah, everything we love to have from Power BI tools is in place here, and it works. Yeah.
By the way, what I can do with desktop is I can connect to this using a thin report,
connection.
right? So obviously I can do a live connection and then edit my report separately. So there's no restriction around that. And previously, until the announcement from a couple of weeks ago, Git-Integration would have ignored. Interestingly, not just the direct lake model, but also any connected reports. But now that's working, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Henrik, and I hope that the zooming in the second half worked because Henrik wanted some zoom, and you performed it. Yeah, good, good stuff, Matthias, and yeah, to make some announcements. I think we see each other next time in near Cologne, where I live, and in St. Augustine, and in the end of June, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
That's it.
I think it's 29th of June.
Yeah, 29th. Yes, 29th is a Saturday, and before I will attend to the pre-con, but with Brian Bunk to get into some real-time data. It's a backlog bucket list thing, and I think to spend the whole day with this will definitely help. And yeah, again, I think my whole company will be at this event, SQL Saturday Rhineland. So anyone who's watching and is nearby accidentally, just feel free to join. Will be good. And our sessions are not in parallel, so I can I can visit you too.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Always great traveling to Germany, of course.
Yeah, of course. And this time, the first time for me to have the speaker dinner too, because I managed to be a speaker now. Cool. So for you, it's quite a very common thing, but there's always new stuff. So every talk of you this year was also different, I think. And
yeah, let's keep it interesting, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely way more interesting to talk about than we can afford. to do. So
Okay.
definitely looking forward to 29th of June.
Yeah. Awesome. And then thanks again and see you.
Okay, bye.